I think testimonies are powerful, right? We can argue about our beliefs, but you cannot argue with me about my experience, what God has done in my life. It reminds me of the man that was born blind. They wanted to debate with him about theology, and he said, look, I don't know all this about Jesus. He said, but one thing I do know, I once was lost, and now I'm found. I once was blind, but now I see. I know you can't argue with me about that. You might be able to argue with me about whether or not he was born on December 25th, whether or not he was white or black, but you cannot argue with me about my experience and the impact that he's had on my life. We are in the third part of a message series that we're calling Resilient Faith, and I've really been growing through this message series. That's one of the things I love about preaching is that I get an opportunity to grow myself, right? I preach to myself before I preach to you. God speaks to me before he allows me to speak to you, and I'm really growing as a result of this message series. And how can you not grow as you're hearing something about faith? Faith is important. Faith is very valuable to our existence in life. And so how could you not grow when it comes to a message on faith? And we've been talking about resilient faith. All of us have had these people who have come into our lives, and they've impacted our lives so tremendously that we knew without a shadow of a doubt that if it was not for them coming into our lives, I think we're stuck here, John. If it wasn't for them coming into our lives, we wouldn't be where we are today. That they've impacted us in such a way that we know that our lives wouldn't be what it is today if it was not for them. These were people that changed the trajectory of our lives. I was just looking, I did the graveside service for my uncle Otis Bailey, who he was a charter member here at Peace Chapel, and one of the things that I said was that he helped change the trajectory of my life. Like if I had not developed the relationship that I developed with him, I wouldn't be the father that I am today. I wouldn't be the man of God that I am today. And we all have those people that we've encountered in life, and we would call these people, or we would consider these people staples in our life story. They added tremendous value to our lives. We wouldn't be where we are today if it was not for them. And I wouldn't be the man that I am today. Not only did God use my uncle Otis Bailey, but God also used this man right here, Pastor Robert Kennard. And I remember this like it was yesterday, that a lot of you guys don't know my story, that I grew up in this neighborhood and I used to terrorize this neighborhood. And it's so ironic that God called me from this neighborhood to transform this neighborhood, or to do my part to transform the very neighborhood that I worked to destroy. But I remember walking down Avalon one day, seeing Pastor Kennard and Bill Landron, and Pastor Kennard he saw enough in me and had enough faith in him to stop and have a conversation with me. And we built a relationship. And I remember Pastor Kennard, he said he allowed me to come to Bible study and disrupt the Bible study with my challenging questions. I had some very challenging questions. I wanted to know, if there's a God, then why this? If there's a God, then why do innocent people suffer? If there's a God, then why doesn't he do something about babies dying, right? I had some very challenging questions, and because my family members were so connected to the church, I was at that age where I was trying to separate myself a little bit from my family. I wanted to establish my own identity, so I wouldn't come on Sundays. I would go visit other churches on Sundays, but on Wednesdays, I would come to Bible study, and Pastor Kennard was patient with me. And he allowed me to ask my difficult questions. And not only on Wednesdays, but we developed a relationship throughout the week, and he poured into my life, and he allowed me to be a part of his life, and I witnessed his faith journey, and it encouraged my heart, and it changed me. But it's not just Pastor Kennard. There are several people that I've met along the way in life that if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. That many of you guys know Ryder Paysinger. That's a good friend of mine, but he's more than a friend. He's become a brother to me. That we've developed a relationship where he knows me in ways that most people don't. That he's watched me go through challenging situations. I've watched him go through challenging situations. Pastor Juan, I met him coaching at St. Andrews Park, and he's not just another coach. He's not just another friend. He's like a brother to me. And God has allowed my path to cross with people like this. Another guy, an older white man, Fred Whitney. God allowing our paths to cross helped me to recognize that we have more in common with people who are of other races than we think. That racism is not as much of a problem as people would like for us to believe it is. That this older white man that was born in upstate New York, who lived in Huntington Beach, who told me that he had racist parents, took the time to develop a relationship with a boy who grew up in South Central Los Angeles, and he helped me to learn how to make money legally. That if it wasn't for Fred Whitney, I wouldn't be the businessman that I am today. And so all of us have encountered these people in life that if it was not for these people, our lives would not be the same. And then my wife. I met her on August the 3rd, 2019. And that one encounter changed my life. Now, some of you knew me before I met her. And you guys know the impact that she has had on my life. There is no way that I would be where I am today apart from her. And for some of you, it might be a coach. It might be a stepfather. It might be a teacher. It might be a mentor. But you know that your life changed when you met them, that somehow them coming into your life offered you some sort of support that you did not have before. They offered you valuable insight. They offered you encouragement. Perhaps they gave you a perspective that you did not have before. They offered you hope. But you know without a shadow of a doubt that if you would not have crossed paths with these people, you would not be the person that you are today. And so I know some people came to mind as I was talking about that. Have you thanked them? Do they know how much they've impacted your life? We are in the third part of a message series that we're calling Resilient Faith. And in this message series, we're looking at the components that help us to develop that stubborn faith, that real life faith that shows up at work, that faith that shows up on the job, that faith that shows up in your home, that real life faith that actually helps you to get through life. You guys have met those people where you look at them and you see them go through life and they just live life as if God is in control. They go through challenging things just like us, but for whatever reason, they just push through. They don't allow challenges and obstacles to move them off their square, and the way that they live their lives is inspirational. We question ourselves and we wonder whether or not if we went through what they're going through, how would we respond? And so we've been looking at this. And we've been examining those components that add to this faith. What is it that contributes to this type of faith? Because most of us, we have the right beliefs, but the problem is it doesn't result in the right behavior. That you can have the right beliefs. You can have all of your beliefs together. You can believe that Jesus is Lord. You can believe that he died on the cross for your sins. But at the end of the day, how does that impact your life? And we live in a world where there is a church on just about every single corner. We have a bunch of Christians that live in the hood. And they have fit beliefs, but they have flabby faith. That when they encounter trials and tribulations, when life gets difficult, they cave. When life gets difficult, instead of them pushing forward, they turn back and go to drugs. When life gets difficult, instead of them pushing forward, they turn back and go to alcohol. When life gets difficult, instead of them pushing forward, they turn back to the life that they lived before they became Christians. So what value is it for me to be a Christian if it does not impact my life? And the reason why it doesn't impact people's lives is because people are content with just believing the right things, but they don't behave the right way. That Jesus' initial invitation to those in the first century wasn't just to believe the right things. That Jesus called for us to follow him. That following Jesus is more than just believing right, but somewhere along the line, the church watered this down and we reduced it to simply just believe. And believing alone is not enough. That if your faith doesn't transform your life, then your faith is of no value to you. See, we've been tricked into believing that faith is something that we use to manipulate God to do what we want him to do. That God is not that small. God is not that naive that he's going to give you something that you want that doesn't line up with what he wants for you. That real life faith that shows up in the real world is you trusting God enough to do what he tells you to do, regardless of how things are going to turn out. Even if you don't know how things are going to turn out, you just trust God to obey. You trust God to do what he called for you to do. And if Christians start living like this, we can change the world. Pastor Kennard said, if we're willing to do for the truth what the cults and people who are a part of false religions are willing to do for a lie, imagine the impact that we could have on the world. That there are people who are willing to strap bombs around themselves and go into crowds of people and kill themselves for a lie. If only we would be willing to do for the truth what they would be willing to do for a lie. Imagine the impact that it would have on our communities. Imagine the impact that it would have on families. But we're just content with believing the right things when Jesus said we need to follow. What does it mean to follow? That means that you do as Jesus would do. You live your life the way that Jesus would live his life. You respond to adversity the way that Jesus would respond to adversity. People treat you bad, you respond to them the way that Jesus would respond to them. But the problem is we live in unredeemed flesh. And this unredeemed flesh makes us want to go tit for tat with people. And that's where our faith comes in. See, our faith is what separates us from ordinary people. That we respond to things the way that Jesus responds to things because we've made him Lord of our lives. We've given him authority over our lives. And our faith says that we trust him regardless of how things may turn out. And so every single day, every follower of Jesus Christ should wake up with this question: what should I do? Every single encounter that we have in life, we should ask ourselves this question: what should I do? Not what do I believe, but what should I do? As you encounter people on the job, as you're entertaining certain relationships, as you're trying to decide how to spend your money, you need to ask yourself, what should I do? Since I have absolute confidence that God is in control and that he is with me. Not what do I believe. Believing is easy. All you got to do is think something in your head. But following is more demanding. Following requires a change of behavior. Following requires a change of attitude. And God has called for us to follow Jesus. You say you believe in Jesus, prove it by the way that you live. And so in this series, we've been answering this question: what fuels the development of resilient faith? When you see these people that respond to adversity like champions, you say, I want that. How do I get that? What are the essential ingredients? And what we've discovered is that there are 5 things that God uses to grow up and blow up our faith. That as you examine people who have resilient, stubborn, amazing faith, that what you will find in each one of these are these 5 ingredients. In week 1, we looked at the first, and that is teaching to application. That every person that has resilient faith, at some point in time in their lives, they made the decision that I'm going to sit under a teacher who teaches to application, a teacher who gives me handles, right? That I'm not content with just hearing a message that motivates me, hearing a message that just excites me, that I want something that I can apply. And the problem that I see in most black churches is a bunch of emotional preaching. Preaching that stirs up our emotions, but it does not impact our behavior. And so many times we walk out of the church and we feel good, but it doesn't impact our lives. Many times we walk out of the church and we feel convicted, and for some of you, you think that's what it is. I went to church, the preacher beat up on me, I feel convicted, and that's it. God wants more for you than that. God wants you to be under the type of preaching that moves you to answer this question: what am I supposed to do with what I've heard? And so part of that is on you. That we teach to application here at Peace Chapel, that when you come to Peace Chapel, it's not about me waxing eloquent to stir up your emotions. I'm going to give you something that you could apply. I spend 15, 16 hours preparing a message. The majority of that is me putting something together that gives you handles, where you have something that helps you to know what you're supposed to do with what you have heard, but the rest is on you. I cannot apply it for you. And what happens is, as you begin to apply what you heard, that's your faithfulness, your faith intersecting with God's faithfulness, and your faith grows on the other end. That as you hear a message, and that message challenges you to forgive, and you say, it's difficult for me to forgive. I don't want to forgive that person, because if I forgive them, they're going to do what they did to me. They're going to keep on doing it. My parents taught me if somebody hits you, you hit them back. But you say to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to do what my parents taught me to do. I'm not going to do what the flesh tells me to do. Even though everything inside of me is telling me to hold a grudge, I'm going to trust the Lord. I just heard a message about forgiving. I'm going to trust the Lord, and I'm going to forgive. You forgive that person. And then God shows you the benefits of forgiving that person, and then your faith grows. And that applies to every arena of life. When it comes to your finances, many of you have been taught to just live it up. That your value is in what you wear. And so you get a few dollars, you go buy a Gucci belt. You get a few dollars, you go buy a car that you cannot afford. But you hear a message that challenges you to be responsible with your finances. And that's going against everything inside of you. But you say, I'm going to trust God anyway. And you are responsible with your finances. God's faithfulness shows up on the other side. Your faith grows. And so it's teaching to application. You need to ask yourself after every message, what am I supposed to do with what I heard? And then last week, we looked at the second component, and that's personal ministry. That if you want your faith to grow, you have to put yourself in situations where God can use you. That as you see a need, it's not enough to just pray about that need. You ask God to use you to meet that need. That as Jesus was, even though he was tired, even though he was grieving, when he saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion and he healed them. He saw a need and he got involved. If we start becoming more like Jesus when it comes to meeting needs, we're going to see God show up in ways. At the end of the day, we're going to be like, there's no way I could have accomplished that by myself. The only way that I was able to do that is because God's hand was on me. But you got to put yourself in situations for God to use you. As you see a need for foster parents, you need to step up to the plate and say, I'll use what I have. I don't have a lot, but I got a bedroom, I got a couple of beds, and I got faith that God is going to show up and use me. Personal ministry, that if you want your faith to grow, you have to put yourself in situations where God can use you. And then when we push through our inadequacies in order to say yes to God for the benefit of other people, our faith grows. And so if you want your faith to grow, you got to expose yourself to teaching the application. You got to expose yourself to personal ministry. And then today we're going to look at the third thing that God uses to grow your faith, and that is monumental relationships. As I started off with the introduction, that every one of us have had those people that have come into our lives, and we know that if it was not for these people coming into our lives, we would not be the people we are today. As we look back over the relationship, it seems as if God just dropped them into our lives at the right time. It felt like it was divine intervention. That as you go through life, you're going to experience challenging seasons. And God has designed these challenging seasons for us to go through with other people who have things to help us to get past those challenging seasons that we don't have ourselves. That the Bible talks about the church as being a body. And a body is one body that's made up of many different parts. And each one of these parts have different functions. It's the same with us in community, that as we do life, we're going to go through things in life. And God is going to bring us to situations that we're not going to get through on our own. And so he brings other people into our lives, and they lead us to the means that we need to get past that particular situation. I met Alvin through Tawana, and as a result of that relationship, I learned so much in my relationship with Alvin. He's no longer here with us. Alvin passed away. But through that relationship, Alvin led us to Kim. Through the relationship that I have with Alvin, I led Alvin to Ryder. Ryder and Alvin developed a relationship on their own. See, we all meet people in life. We meet tons of people in life. Most of the people that we meet in life, we forget about. But there are people that we encounter in life that has had such an impact on our lives that they will always be a part of our faith story. All of us have people like that. These are monumental relationships. And this played out in my life. It continues to play out in my life. It plays out in your life, and it'll continue to play out in your life. There's one story in the Bible where we see this played out, and I want to share this with you guys. Jesus goes to Philip, and he tells Philip, "Follow me." Philip recognizes that Jesus is the Messiah. He's excited about the opportunity to follow Jesus. Philip says, "Hold on for a minute, Jesus." He runs to his buddy Nathaniel, and he tells Nathaniel, "I found the Messiah." Nathaniel is excited. "You found the Messiah?" "What?" "Yes, I found the Messiah. And you're not going to believe this. He's from Nazareth." Nathaniel says, "Nazareth? Are you serious? Can anything good come from there?" And he begins to clown Jesus' hometown. But Philip says, "Look, I'm not going to go back and forth with you about the background of his hometown, but watch Philip's invitation. Come and see. Come and see. I'm not going to go back and forth with you about the color of Jesus. I'm not going to go back and forth with you about where he was born. I'm not going to go back and forth with you about when he was born. Come and see." And this is an invitation that all of us can use. See, we think that we have to be theologically deep to win people to Jesus. Philip said, "Come and see." Oftentimes, that's the only thing that we need to do when it comes to an invitation. Come and see. And Philip became a staple in Nathanael's faith story with this one invitation: come and see. That is a monumental relationship that Nathanael would have not become the person that God called him to become had not Philip invited him to come and see. How many people are going to be in heaven because of you? How many lives have been impacted because of you? You say, well, I'm not a preacher. I don't know the Bible from cover to cover. I don't know the Bible like that. I've only read the Bible twice. Philip said, come and see. You can be a staple in somebody's faith story, that as they begin to tell their story about how their lives got better, how they became better parents, how they became better with their finances, and they begin to talk about you, they say it's like God dropped them into my life at just the right time. That as you go through life's challenges and you're looking for answers, and God allows your path to cross with people and they're willing to help, it's as if God dropped them into your life at just the right time. The book of Hebrews captures this so well. The book of Hebrews is like one long sermon. We don't know who wrote it, but it was written to a bunch of Jewish people who were experiencing a bunch of challenges in life. And the writer writes this to them right in the midst of their challenges. He says, let us hold unswervingly. Stop swerving. Let us go straight to the hope that we profess. Stop swerving to the right and swerving to the left. Stop allowing challenging situations to cause you to veer away from the hope that you profess. For he who promised is faithful. There's our word. He who promises is faithful. But here's the climax of the letter. And here's the point of today's message. He says, and let us consider, an accounting term, how we may spur one another. Let us consider, let us look for ways to spur one another toward love and good deeds. Not towards just believing more, but let us look for ways that we may push one another, that we may encourage one another to live out this faith, to live like Jesus would live, to respond like Jesus would live. That as we live life in this challenging world that we live in, this fallen world that we live in, that we shouldn't just be concerned about ourselves, but that we should be looking out for our brothers and our sisters. And as I see her going through something, I step in there and I look for ways to encourage her to stay straight. That you can do this. I know that life is hard. I've been there, sweetheart. I've done that, sweetheart. And I'm telling you that if you trust God in the midst of this, you will not regret it. You cannot swerve. You cannot veer off. Looking for ways to spur one another on toward love and good deeds. That we need to be accountable to one another's. That we need to hold ourselves accountable to people so that they can speak God's truth into our lives. And we need to be willing to speak God's truth into other people's lives. And then he says, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. Instead of making it a habit to miss church, you need to be focused on how you can encourage your brother or your sister. You know what it's like to relapse, and you see them on the verge of relapsing. You need to have the courage to step in there and tell them to keep on keeping on. Don't go there, because that one decision is going to ruin your life. You need to have the courage and the faith to speak truth to your brother and your sister, to hang in there. And that's what the church is all about. That's what Peace Chapel is all about. That's why we push life groups, because life groups gives you an opportunity to develop a monumental relationship. We have a reentry group that meets across the street every Saturday. And the relationships that are being developed in that reentry group fills my heart with joy. I see God working through Che, and I see God working through that group to help people to develop monumental relationships. And I want to share with you guys just a little bit of what these guys experience as being a part of that group. Check out this video. Come on. Come on, bro.
I feel wonderful.
There you go.
I really do. Thank you for this right here.
Yeah.
I need it.
There you go.
My son has hands on me. Ran into that.
Let's go. That's what's up.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Let's go. We'll help you.
That's right. Come on. That's right.
Come on.
That's right, baby.
There you go.
That's right, baby.
There we go.
There you go.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Isn't that wonderful? Doesn't that bring joy to your heart? God has called for us to do life together. And the reason why is proximity matters. Proximity matters. That as you are in close proximity with people, they can rub off on you for the good or for the bad. If you hang around dope heads, you're going to be a dope head. If you hang around millionaires, you will become the next millionaire. If you hang around people of faith, you will develop faith, because proximity matters. People lose faith when they disconnect from people of faith. You got to spend time with people who have faith. And you watch how they go through life. You watch how they deal with challenges with their children, challenges with their mate, challenges with their health. And as they continue to exercise faith, resilient faith, continue to trust God, and you see God show up in their lives, it makes it easier for you to have faith. It works just like that. When we see God's faithfulness in someone else's life, it's easier to trust him with ours. As I watch God show up in Pastor Juan's life, time in and time out, it makes it easier for me to trust him with mine. Proximity matters. Staying connected to people of faith will grow our faith. Staying connected to people of faith will grow our faith. That's why the writer of Hebrews says, let's not make it a habit of missing church. Let's make it a habit of encouraging one another, that as you spend time with me and I spend time with you, because we are in close proximity with one another, I'm going to rub off on you and you're going to rub off on me. Listen to this. Your friends will determine the quality and the direction of your life. The people that you are in close proximity with will determine the quality and the direction of your life. Solomon said, if you walk with the wise, you will become wise. But a companion of fools will suffer harm. You say, but I'm not doing what they do. When it explodes, the shrapnel will do damage to you. We see it all the time. People end up in jail and they weren't the ones that pulled the trigger. They were just in close proximity to the ones who did. People end up in jail and they weren't the one who committed the robbery, but they were just in close proximity to the one who did. People end up relapsing because they're in close proximity to people who do drugs. And so let's take a page out of Philip's book and let's start using this. Come and see. You say, I've never been to church before, and everything that I see about church, I just don't like it. I don't want to go to a place where I got to sit in there for hours, hear a message that I don't understand. Hold up. Just come and see. You have no idea what hangs in the balance of that single invitation. Come and see. Come and see can result in a man standing before people, teaching them the Word of God, when at one time he didn't know the Word of God. He was getting high in the neighborhood and terrorizing the neighborhood. You have no idea what hangs in the balance of that one invitation. Come and see. Come and sit next to me. When is the last time you've invited somebody to church? I want to give you a strategy. The next person you invite, go pick them up and bring them to church. I've never seen a person not show up that I brought to church. 100% of the people that you bring to church will show up. 100% of the people that you bring to life groups will show up. 100% of the people that you bring to the re-entry group will show up. Come and see. A single invitation could write you into someone else's faith story. Monumental relationships. When we see God's faithfulness in someone else's life, it's easier for us to trust him with ours.